All right, so we're joined from Slidell, Louisiana, by my man, fellow LSU fan,
Go
uh,
Tigers.
market president for Napa, corporate training education guru, just been in so many companies. Kevin Rainey. I got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're in the education training career cluster. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools: Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, Madison Central High School, Rosa Scott, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time for us today, my man.
No, absolutely, man. When you reached out, it was an honor. It's an honor, number one, to give back to you, but then also give back to our young people.
All right, hold on 1 second. I got the. All right, so part two, we got interrupted by the earthquake drill. That's only appropriate today. So again, Kevin Rainey from Slidell, Louisiana, market president for Napa, and we're recording this for all of our friends. We're in the education training career cluster. So before we talk about all it is that you've done, because you've got a laundry list of a resume, doing some great things there with Napa, really leading the way when it comes to hiring and educating staff. Take us back through your background, from Louisiana and done a lot of things before you got into this.
Yeah. Well, shoot, it goes way back, but I'll keep it in reference to the training. I went to work in the cell phone industry for a company called Radio Phone, and I can remember going through the training, the onboarding training, new hire training, and I remember sitting there listening to the trainers and really just kind of dozing off and falling asleep at how miserably boring they were. And I thought to myself, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way to kind of train up our folks that are coming on board. And so I made it my mission to learn the business first. That's the first thing I wanted to do because I figured that's the only way I can really figure out a way to make it better. And so once I did that, I spent a couple of years working in the retail stores, managing some stores, and then at some point I just went, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to jump in. I actually ended up changing companies and going to work for Sprint, which of course is where I met you, and got in there as a trainer. And I did. I found a better way. I found a way to make it more exciting, more invigorating, a little more engaging. And from there, I mean, that led me from doing that for about 8 years. That led me to becoming director of training at Audubon Nature Institute, which, in the New Orleans world is very, very famous. It's our Audubon Zoo,
Absolutely.
aquarium, and insectarium. So from I got to get in there as the director of training, not the animals, just the people, because I'm not smart enough to train the animals. So they wouldn't let me near those guys too much. But so from there, honestly, I ended up going and becoming vice president of a company or their HR, the whole HR team, because of course training falls under HR. You learn a lot about the human resources side of things, which is fun because I can be a little bit messy. So it's kind of fun to learn some of the ins and outs of what people are doing and what they're doing wrong, but also help them out as well. So from there, I became the vice president of human resources for a company called Intellicom, which is actually located here in Slidell. And from there, I had an opportunity to come over to Napa and do some big things with a company that is growing leaps and bounds. And it keeps me doing all of the things that I love to do, which is hiring, training, developing people. Really, developing leaders has become more of my training niche in life, or at least my passion, I guess.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, we all seen the commercials, the Napa know-how. You don't have a background in automotive, but every
Done.
company, especially every large company, they're going to need people to train their employees. Now, before we came on, the kids were asking me, well, why do people need that? It is incredible how important it is for companies to hold on to people instead of trying to bring in new people. They want to train them with the culture, train them with the policies, train them in customer service, which I know is a big passion of yours. So
Yes.
what is the purpose of these corporate trainers when it comes to bettering these companies?
Yeah. No, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, and maybe I'm just a little pompous, but I think the training position is one of the absolute most important positions in the organization. And for exactly what you said, yes, you're bringing new people on. But, when you start thinking about it from a financial perspective, at the end of the day, it's a lot cheaper for me to keep somebody and to get them trained up the proper way than to constantly have this revolving door of people leaving and people coming in, because you've got a ramp up period. And it doesn't matter what business you're in, there comes a time where you've gotten somebody new. Matter of fact, that just before I got on here, I was offering a position to a gentleman who worked for one of our competitors. And even though he's been in this business for 15 years, at the end of the day, he's got to come in here and he's got to learn our systems. He has to learn our processes. And by the way, number one thing, he has to learn our culture, because it's going to be different in every company that you work for. So our objective will be to keep him on board for many, many years, so that we don't have to start all over again. Because even coming in with that much experience, at the end of the day, it's still going to be about a 6-month ramp up time.
Sorry, had the intercom there.
Okay.
Now, and another thing is, people, here on the high school level, we talk about getting in on these companies and working their way up. There's so many great companies here in Mississippi, there in Louisiana, that want to get people in right out of high school, right out of college, right out of community college, that have these skills, and they want to keep them and move them up within the company. So that's why it's so important to learn the processes, and like you said, learn the business. Now, let's say somebody learns the business. Is this a type of career you would necessarily need a college degree to move into?
I'll be honest with you, no. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are going to tell you, well, you got to have the college degree to have the conversation. I'm gonna be honest with you. I look. I know I'm talking to high school kids. At the end of the day, college isn't for everybody.
I
But
agree.
you get in there and you learn the business. And I'd rather, when I interview people, and I look, I came from an IT company before this. I was hiring people making anywhere from $60,000 to $125,000, and I never once asked them if they had a college degree. I didn't get my degree until after I got well into this, and I just did it because I knew I had a daughter, and I didn't want her to go, well, you don't have a degree, Dad. So I want her to have those options for herself, and we're very competitive. So you don't. The important thing is that, number one, you go in and you learn that business, and you have a passion. And I find, for me at least, what's happened in my life as I've gone through this career is I like teaching, I like educating, and I like, helping other people develop. There comes a time where it became my passion to see other people succeed. That's how I defined my own success. And look, let's be honest, it pays more than a teacher.
Yeah, yeah. I knew that, but I wanted to hear you say it. I have a good friend of mine that is a corporate trainer who did not finish college, and she makes great money, travels to Miami and all over
Yeah.
because she learned a business. So, and that leads me to what I want to talk about next, because again, and look, we don't push that the college is for everybody. That narrative has changed, at least in our school district. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
At least in our school district, we're all about giving options. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, we have some great universities here in Mississippi, both public, private, PWI, and HBCU. So we want them to make the best decision for them. We also have great community colleges. But the thing that keeps missing, at least in my opinion, is the ability to speak, the ability to present, the ability to sell, and the ability to communicate. And I think when it comes to being a trainer, and in a lot of these jobs that you hire for, that's the skills you're looking for. Now, I've got a room full in here with me, and I've got some extremely intelligent kids in here with me right now. They're all very respectful. They all come from great families, and they all work hard. But that only gets you so far.
Yeah.
So when you're hiring people for these different positions, no matter what their level of education is, what are the skills that you see that they are missing and that you think young people need to work on?
Right. Well, I'll tell you two things that really jump to mind. Number one is communication skills. It floors me how little people can communicate, and I think it's probably a little bit of a sign of the times. I don't want to sound like the old guy in the room, but we don't communicate verbally anymore. I find that the people who are succeeding at the company I'm with at Napa, and then even the people that succeeded at Intellicom and at Audubon, are the people who can actually go into a room of other people and kind of hold that room and because
Yep.
like, here's the deal: if you can communicate, at the end of the day, you're going to get your message across, which is most likely going to then make you come across as the most intelligent, the most ready person to move forward in a company. So I would say by far number one is communication, or the ability to communicate, the ability to stand in front of a group of people, be it 3 people or 100 people, and be able to kind of control that room, which is something that you develop by becoming a corporate trainer. You develop because you have no choice. And honestly, the other one is I'm looking for somebody that actually wants to do the job. And a lot of times, I talk to people. Matter of fact, I was having a conversation yesterday with one of my favorite people at Napa, and I know what he can do. I've been doing this long enough. I can see what people are able to do. beyond even what they know they can do. But at the end of the day, I could not get him to figure out that he wants to do that. He's more of like, well, whatever, whatever. So I want somebody. We're lacking is communication and people that truly just want to do a specific job within a company. But the people who come to me, I have that conversation. I see they can communicate. I see they can control a room. Those are the people I'm looking to move up the food chain, so to speak. And again, when you move up the food chain, yes, you get more responsibility, you get a little bit more pressure, but you also get more money. And look, that,
Yeah.
like it or not, we gotta pay the mortgage, we gotta pay the rent, we gotta keep the lights on and the groceries on the table. As you can tell, I love my groceries, so that's what I keep striving for and looking for.
You got a good reaction on that one. Now, I think I can speak for every teacher that's going to see this later. Is that the big challenge we face is that these kids, and I'm not. And again, I was talking to them earlier. I'm not speaking on these kids specifically. I'm talking about a generation. So I'm not trying to point the finger at anybody in here. But a generational thing is that a lot of these teenagers, again, very respectful, hardworking, intelligent. I've got, again, I cannot go tell you how gifted this bunch in here with me is now. But not having the skill to be able to not write like you text, to be able to walk in, introduce yourself, and say, "Hey, my name is." I'm applying for this job. Because look, you may have a great GPA in college. You may go to a prestigious university, have a 3.9, 3.8, 4.0. But if you can't go in and kill an interview, it doesn't matter how good of a student you are. You've got to be able to sell yourself. And then once you have the job, you got to be able to sell the product.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you too, that the part of that communication isn't just being able to talk, right? We all can talk. We all possess the ability, but it's also, how do you hold yourself? When you come and sit across the table from me, I'm looking at you. You're coming to me for a job. I'm coming to you and I want you to come to work for my company, but I need you to have a lot of things. And it's more than just communication is so much more than talking. Communication also involves eye contact. Communication involves facial expressions, body language. And I think a lot of I know for a fact, I've had people sit in front of me that are extremely intelligent people. But man, if you can't look me in the eyes, you can't shake my hand, you can't look like you want to be in the room with me. You can't look. You're constantly looking elsewhere. You're not doing those basic things. The reality is that's not something that I want on my team. That's not what I'm trying to build as an organization. So yeah, that communication, that's a big piece of this puzzle for you guys. I'll be honest with you. You come into a room and you look somebody in the eyes and you have good positive facial expressions and body language. At the end of the day, you're more likely to get that job, even if you don't talk as well. I can get you there. I can build your confidence in standing in front of people and talking. But what I can't do is I can't teach you to be confident inside yourself.
Yeah, and especially in a competitive industry like Napa's in. Even on the not on the retail side, and then in the mechanic side. We have a great automotive service program at our career center here. But if I go in and take my car somewhere to get fixed and you can't tell me what's wrong with it and can't explain it, I'm taking my business elsewhere. And that's just at the end of the day, that's the way it is. If I walk in a store and you can't tell me where something is and you can't explain to me how something works, I'm going to buy it from somebody else. And if that's the case, they don't need you there.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to working in this world, right? If you go out onto the retail front, if you become a mechanic, at the end of the day, you got to be able to pay for yourself. No, there's no free money, there's no free rides. At the end of the day, you got to be able to sell more than you're making. And if you're a mechanic, you got to be able to do more repairs, and you got to be able to you got to pay for yourself, man. And that's the way every company is, regardless of what the industry is. You have to pay for yourself.
Yeah, and that's something I just can't stress enough, because there's a lot of industries right now, especially these technology companies, that need good, smart people, but they need people that can, you may have a work from home job, you may work in a technical field, you still got to be able to communicate. If you're working remote, you got to be able to send emails people know how to read. You got to be able to get on a meeting like this and look presentable.
Yes.
Now, and one thing I did, because I think it's funny, is talk about some of the most ridiculous things that you've actually seen in interviews from people trying to get jobs.
Well, yeah, I mean, how much time do we have? Because it can go on forever. It literally floors me. I actually had a guy one time. This is the first one that popped into my head. I had a young man. He came in, and I say a young man, he was probably 22, 23 years old, and it was with the IT company. And he came in, and look, I like somebody who has confidence, but the attitude was absolutely horrible. I would ask him a question, and it might be something as simple as, "Hey, man, why don't you give us a little bit of your background?" I usually will start off with, obviously with pleasantries, hello, welcoming them, ask if they want some coffee or water, depending on the time of day. But then I say, look, I'll hold on. I can see your resume here, and it's great. That got you in the door. But at the end of the day, tell me, like this resume can talk, but tell me, I want you to talk to me about what some of the things are. And he looked at me and he goes, well, what do you mean? And
Wow.
I said, well, I can see that you worked XYZ place for so much. This is what you say you did. But just tell me who are you, right? Who are you, the person? How did you do these? Why did you do these things? And he's like, well, why do you do the things you do? And I'll be honest with you, I looked at him and I said, hey, man, I appreciate you taking your time for coming in. But you know what? I'm not going to waste your time or my time. But sitting here, the reality is you're not going to be a fit for this company. So, I mean, literally had no answers to any questions. If you put it on your resume, you put it on your job application, you should be able to talk to it. You should be able to explain
Absolutely.
it. And honestly, as someone who has interviewed, good Lord, probably thousands of people in my lifetime, really what we're trying to do is, honestly, I don't really care that you can't tell me and dictate exactly what's on that resume word for word. And look, if you can't remember, you started there in April of 2022 or March of 2022, makes no difference to me. The biggest thing I want to do is, can you communicate? And you said it a little earlier, can you sell yourself to me? This is the opportunity for you to do that. I'm grading you on a lot of different things. As the trainer guy, as the HR person, I'm grading you on one thing: body language, communication, skill set, sort of. I usually will have an expert in the room. Like, I can assure you, I know nothing. I don't know what blinker fluid is. I don't even know. They joke with me all the time, Kevin, go get the blinker fluid. I know there's no blinker fluid, but when I first started, I was like, oh, well, heck, let me go look for it, right? I'm not that guy. These hands are soft. I don't even like physical labor. So, you don't have to have that. I'm not looking for that, but I'm going to have an expert. The interview I just did here a few minutes ago, right here in this room, I had an expert. This guy is the Napa know-how guy, right? You see the commercials. He's Napa know-how. So he can ask those technical questions, but I'm grading you on a whole different level. At the end of the day, most companies will have somebody that can teach you the job itself. But what most companies don't have is somebody who can actually be willing to learn that job, can do all the things that it takes in order to do it. I can't teach you. Mamas and daddies and grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles in the family unit, that's their job to teach you being a good human being a productive member of society. I can teach you the skills to do the job itself. I can't teach you those things.
Absolutely. And another thing is, I'm really big on interview skills, and we don't hit on them as much in this class, but I still think it's important for high school students to start being familiar with this. A few basics that I say in the interview is, when they ask you, do you have any questions? The answer 0% of the time is no. Have something. It takes 20 minutes to rehearse an interview. Think about the questions you're going to ask you. You don't have to have a scripted answer, but at least be familiar with what you're going to say. Have an idea of what you're going to say. If you go to Google, it takes 10 seconds to Google the 100 most asked interview questions.
Yeah.
And then if you have an idea of what you're going to say, it's amazing how much easier those words flow out. And then, even if it's an online application, because almost all online applications are online now, have something that you can show and say, look, here's my resume, because you don't know who's going to be in that room. You could have 5 people there and only 2 have seen your resume. They shouldn't have to look around for it. If you show that you're prepared, that shows you take initiative. It's so many small things you can do in an interview that can set you apart for no matter what industry it is.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, nothing irritates me more. Now, I'm not going to say I won't hire you, but if I get to the end of that interview and I say, what questions do you have? And of course, that's a trainer technique. You don't say, but do you have any questions? Because you give them a chance to say no. If you ask the question, well, what questions do you have for me? If they come back and say, I don't have any, man, that's a negative mark. And I'll tell you, I'll share.
That is a red flag.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of my favorite questions that I had somebody ask me one time when I was interviewing him, at the end of it, I turned it over to them. And normally I give like this whole spiel. You can tell I'm not real shy or quiet or anything. But, I'm like, well, hey, we beat you up for about 30 minutes with questions. Now it's your turn to beat us up, if it's me or if it's other people in the room. And this young lady, she says, she goes, my number one question that I have for you is, what is your favorite thing about working here? And what is your least favorite thing about working here?
That's a great question.
Oh my God. You know what I did? I brought out the job offer and made the offer on the spot, which I rarely ever do. Because that is a great question, because, when you think about it, she wants to know what is good about this job. What do you like? But also for her, because go in with some confidence in a sense of like, yes, Kevin is going to interview you for the job. Absolutely, I'm going to interview you for the job. But at the same time, have enough confidence in yourself that you want to find out some things to see, is this someplace that you want to work? And I
Absolutely.
love that.
Yeah. Don't just look at the salary. If you're not going to like working there, it ain't going to be worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I have left jobs before making, $10,000, $20,000 more than the job I go to, because being happy and having a good work environment, that goes a really long way.
All right. Now, before I get to the students' questions, one, you told the story when you were working for Radiophone about how if you'd had better customer service in a certain situation, you would not been in a near-death situation.
Yes.
So tell us that story. It's funny now. I'm sure it wasn't funny at the time.
Yeah.
But tell us, because you said yourself, if I'd have had better customer service, this whole thing could have been avoided. So tell us
Absolutely.
about how that happened and exactly what did happen that crazy day where your life was in danger.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, it just shows you how stupid I was. That's first and foremost. I have this whole. I do a lot of talks around high schools and colleges and different community groups, and I call it my pride and false pride conversation. You probably remember that's what I tell it in my training classes too.
Yeah.
I always point out. Most people will say, "Oh, living on your shoulders, you got the angel and the devil." I call them pride and false pride. And I will tell you that the younger person that I was, or when I was a younger person, false pride had the most loud voice. And the problem with false pride is false pride sounds a lot like pride, especially I was 20 something years old. So I really didn't know the difference. And I don't want to cut into the students' questions, but at the end of the day, I was working in a store. It was a retail store. It was a cell phone retail store, a company called Alltel, which then became Verizon. But it had a long wait time. It was a really big store. It had the most traffic in terms of people in and out of the door of any Alltel in the United States. And young man walks in. He was probably, I think it was like 18 to 20 years old. Young man walks in. There's a long wait, as there always was at that particular store. And I happen to be going up to get the next name off the list to help him. And the guy walks in and he goes, I welcome him. I'm like, hey, welcome to Alltel. I said, if you don't mind, sir, would you mind signing in here? Give us, just put your name on there, maybe a little brief what you're here for. He goes, no, you're going to help me right now. And I said, well, no, sir. I said, we the way we do is you sign in. He looked at me and he said, if you don't help me right now, I'm going to shoot this place up. And that's when false pride on my shoulder got right up in my ear and went, tell that guy he better just do what he got to do. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. He didn't quite use that exact language. It was much harsher, but, I've toned down a little bit. So false pride told me, it was in my ear, and false pride told me to do it. And at that time, I didn't really know the difference between pride and false pride. And at the end of the day, I looked at him and I went, hey man, do what you got to do. And the guy walked out the door. He got in his car and he pulled out onto, it's called Ridge Lake. He went out on Ridge Lake. Then he took a right on the service road. Right before he took a right on the service road, I watched him at the stop sign. I watched him. Now, this to tell you how long ago it was. He reached over and he rolled his window down. He had to crank it down. And then he went right in front of my store, and I saw the gun come out, and I couldn't even talk. And he drove right across the front of my store, and he shot the store up. That place was full of people. There were bullet holes where people were sitting. Now, up to and including, well, now my ex-wife, but I ended up marrying one of the people in that room, giving me the greatest gift in my entire life, in my entire world, which is my daughter. She could have been shot. There was literally a bullet hole in the glass exactly where she was sitting. It should have gone through her back. Not one person was hit. And the reality is my stupidity, my lack of customer service, my lack of understanding, my lack of passion for doing the right thing could have really gotten myself killed. It could have gotten my team killed. It could have gotten the person who gave me my daughter killed. And the reality is because false pride spoke. And look, now that you got me talking about it, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. False pride every single day. I'm in Slidell, which is right outside of New Orleans. False pride is getting young people killed every single day on the streets of New Orleans. I can't imagine it's any different in Jackson, Mississippi. I just can't. False pride is what goes, you ain't going to talk to me like that. You ain't going to disrespect me like that. And it sounds, look, I was young at one time. I know it's probably hard to believe with the no hair and anything, but I was young at one time, and false pride does sound a lot like pride. But I'm going to tell you what pride is. Pride is going to school every day, doing what you're supposed to do, getting a job, being a productive member of society, paying bills, being respectful to your parents, your grandparents. That's what pride is. And I know it's hard, man. It's hard at this age. I got a 17-year-old I talk about all the time about pride and false pride. And, she tries and she's a good kid. Don't let me get me wrong. But, at the end of the day, false pride still stands pretty big on her shoulder, too. So, yeah, if I had proper customer service, if I wasn't full of myself, because that will also get you out of a job. Being a little full of yourself and thinking that you go to telling people you're not going to, there's a difference between disrespect and respect. I get that. But at the end of the day, the first person you need to respect is yourself. All right, you got me
Absolutely.
preaching now. You got me preaching now.
Hey, that's good stuff. That's something that needs to be said. But I got some questions. These are all mainly ninth graders.
Okay.
But this is the first one's Jakethia Brown, and she asked, "What is the best part about training, and what is your favorite part about your job?"
Okay, great question. So I will say that when I trained for the big company Sprint, the greatest part about my job was I got to travel around the country. And by the way, the company paid for it. I have been to so many different places in this country that I would have never gotten to. I probably would have never been in Denver, Colorado, and actually seen real snow falling on the ground. But if it wasn't for working for Sprint, so I have been from Washington, Seattle, Washington, down into Texas, up to New York, Colorado, Chicago. I've been to some of the big places, and I didn't pay for anything. That's the beauty. I didn't pay for my airfare. I didn't pay for my rental car. I didn't pay for my hotel. I didn't pay for my food. And when you're traveling like that, you get to keep all the perks. So, it was 5 years after I left Sprint before I paid for my own hotel room or rental car, because just so many, you accumulate the miles. So, on the surface, that's the big thing. As I've gotten a little older, I find the best part of my job today is seeing the development of younger people underneath me. People that I see that I'm training that are moving forward and one day will pass me up and I'll work for them. That's how I bring some pride. So that's probably my favorite things about training.
That's awesome. This is Micaiah Luckett. You just saw her running in the background a little while ago.
I hope the bee didn't get her.
One of our basketball players here. And she asked, "What's the hardest part about balancing your work schedule on a daily basis?"
So today, the hardest part is that my day is not defined. A lot of times people say, "Hey, Kevin, where are you going to be this afternoon?" I don't know. I don't know. I had planned on taking this either from my home office or from my office, at the corporate headquarters. But sometimes it changes. So that's probably the hardest part, is if you are that person that needs regimentation and you need to know you're doing this at this time and this at this time, that's probably the hardest part. And as looking at as a corporate trainer, the hardest part for me was taking what the company wanted. I wanted to deliver the message and be respectful of my job, but how to deliver that in a much better way than what they had laid out for me. So that would be the two toughest things.
Absolutely. This is Mariah Harris. She's also a basketball player and a dancer here. And she asked, "How has this job changed you as an individual?"
Yeah, it's changed me a lot. It's made me more responsible, actually, because when you become a trainer in corporate America, you have to be right 100% of the time. Because people are asking you about the rules and the regulations. They're asking you about the proper way to do things, and whatever influence that you're giving them in a classroom, they're going to now go back to their stores and influence it. So I think it's made me much more responsible, but it's also made me a whole lot more appreciative for work-life balance. The retail world as a younger person was fine, but as you get a little bit older, you want to spend time with family, you want to spend time with friends, and so it's taught me a better balance in that work-life balance as well.
Absolutely. This is a good one. This is Joel Fleming, one of our basketball players here. And he asked, "What companies are the biggest competitors for Napa, and how do you train the employees to be better than your competitors?"
That is a good question. So O'Reilly's, AutoZone, probably our two biggest competitors that we have. And I used to say all the time, there's really not a whole lot of difference if you really want to break it down between Napa, O'Reilly, AutoZone, and all the other ones. There's not much of a difference. The only thing that I can bring different to the table as a leader and within an organization is the individuals that work there. I tell people all the time, there is I may have even told you when we were training it back in the Sprint days, at the end of the day, you can go anywhere and buy a car battery, you can go buy fluids, you can go buy brakes and rotors and whatever the heck else we sell. But the one thing that we have that the other people don't have is that particular individual sitting in my classroom. They don't have them. And so what we have to do to separate ourselves is we have to really teach and hone in on that customer service, because you have to provide outstanding. People will actually pay more for a product if they feel
Absolutely.
appreciated, well liked, and they feel like they're getting the help and the knowledge that they need. So that's how we try to compete, by providing better service. Because I'll be honest with you, we are not the cheapest when it comes to auto parts. We're not. That's the bottom line. But what we want to provide is the absolute best service.
Yeah, and that's that slogan, the Napa know-how, and it's
Yep.
such a big selling point. And people, that's a clever jingle. People are expecting that, so that culture has to be there in the company.
Absolutely, because if we fail that, then we're really in trouble.
Oh, big time. This is a good one. This is Shavaka Page, and he asked, "What made you interested in becoming a vice president of a company, and what was it like transitioning from the cell phone industry to an animal industry?"
I will tell you so the reason I went from the cell phone industry to the animal industry was because I came home one day. So that, a negative side of corporate trainer, it was great as a single guy. It was a lot of fun. I didn't have any responsibilities, but I'll never forget. I went home one day and my daughter was 6 years old, and I looked at her and I'd been gone for a week, and it looked like she had aged like 4 years in the week that I was gone. I looked at her and I went, "Oh my God, you're 6, and I've missed at least half of your life by being on the road." And that's when I said, I've got to do something different. And I just started looking for a job in Audubon, and here that's a huge name here in
Big
the
time.
greater New Orleans area. So when I saw that they had that, I said, you know what, I'm going to throw my name in the hat. And it was not necessarily to go from a cell phone industry. So that's the reason why I left the cell phone world. But the transition wasn't necessarily going from cell phones to animals. The harder transition was going from corporate America to nonprofit America, because Audubon Nature Institute is a
I
nonprofit.
didn't think about that.
Yeah. And so that was the absolute toughest thing. All the things that you say you hate in corporate America, the red tape, the rules, the regulations, you want them when you get over to a nonprofit, because they're not there. So once I got there, I saw that that's where I can impact, is to put some structure in place. And honestly, it's kind of just doing that. And honestly, I would still be there. Is to be 100% truthful here, I'd still be there. But unfortunately, COVID came around, and that's a business that that got eaten up by COVID. I tell people all the time, I was the only human resources person. I laid off 750 people over those few months, and then I had to lay myself off as person number 751. So,
wow.
Yeah, that was difficult. I'd still be there. It was wonderful. So that was the harder transition, not cell phones to animals. It was corporate to nonprofit.
I'd never thought about that. That's crazy. I just got two more. This is Javion Field, one of our football players here, and he asked, "What motivated you to start a career in this field?"
Honestly, like I said earlier on, the reality is I got into the training field simply because I hate trainers. Matter of fact, I used to start a lot of classes off with, "I'll give you 10 gold stars if you can tell me why I became a trainer." And you'll hear a lot of the same kind of answers. Oh, you like to help people, you like to do good, you like to teach, all those things are true. But I always ended up with, I hate trainers. And I do. To this minute, I hate a real trainer because they bore me. I hate real teachers, because they're boring. You make it exciting. Coach Stockstill, my junior year of high school, taught American history. And that's who I kind of patterned my design or my delivery after, is Coach Stockstill.
That's awesome. I just got one more. This is TJ Jones, another one of our football players, and this is an unbelievable question.
Oh Lord, now I'm excited.
No, this shows he was listening. He said, "What would be the best way to control my false pride?"
That's a young man I want to meet.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So honestly, experience, that's first and foremost. Making mistakes, that's another way to do it. And really, the greatest way to do it is when you find yourself in a situation like I found myself in when that young man told me he's going to shoot the building up, is to just simply pause. Pause and take a breath. Pause and think about your family. Think about whoever you love the most, be that your mom, your dad, your aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, whoever it is that you love the most. You think about them right then and there. And the first thought just popped in your head, what if I say something so stupid because of false pride living on my shoulder that I don't get to ever see them again? Because that's the reality of what happened to me when that guy shot that store up. Is at that point in time, the one person I love more than anything in the world was my mother. Now it's my daughter. Still love my mom, but it was my, that's who I think about even to this day. I'm 52 years old, and I still, false pride still lives here. That voice is a little bit lighter, But the first thing that pops into my head before I open this mouth of mine is I think about her and how will this affect her. So pick who you love the most in your life, whoever that is, and then think to yourself, what happens? What I say next, what I do next could very well mean I never see them again. Oh, and by the way, if you love them that much, odds are they love you that much, and they won't get to see you either.
That's awesome.
How
And
about that, right?
he comes from a great family as well. So
That is a
I
great
know he.
question.
Yeah, I agree. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. But a couple things before we go. First of all, um, you know, this is a field that not a lot of people know about, but it needs good people. So
Yes.
why should they? First of all, why should they look into getting into corporate training? And then two, even if they don't want to, because obviously it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
What are some things they can do right now in high school to improve their customer service skills?
Okay, so why should you think about it? Number one, it pays well. I mean, let's just be honest, right? It pays well, and the perks are amazing. You know, like I said earlier, I've been to places in this country I would have never had an opportunity to go to, probably never see, and it didn't cost me a penny. As a matter of fact, they paid me to go do it, and they also gave me the perks of free hotels. I get to earn all those points where I got to take my family also. So the money is great. And also, it opens up other avenues. You become one of the most popular, one of the most famous, most known person in the company because you get to meet every single person that comes to work there, from CEOs all the way down to the people emptying the garbage cans, right? So that's why. And honestly, if this is of no interest to you, I respect that as well. But at the end of the day, when you have these jobs, your high school jobs, my daughter works at what we call the soda shop. It's basically going and get ice cream and hamburgers, right? But what I tell you is earn a work ethic. You go to work when you're supposed to go to work. You're respectful to the leadership there, be it a supervisor or owner of the business, whatever it is. You're respectful, and also try to learn as much as you can. And never say that's not my job. Never say it's not my job, because you know what? That could be my job. I'm gonna get the opportunity to learn how to do that. You can learn, number one, do you like it? You may have never thought about that. Number two, you might know, I don't ever want to do that. I hated doing that. So just learn as much as you can, do as much as you can at every job you have, but most importantly, show up when you're supposed to be there, where you're supposed to be. Oh, and by the way, one of my biggest pet peeves, tardies. Don't be late. Don't ever be late. There's no reason to.
Love it. That's great stuff. And again, such great information. We got to do this again next semester, but I really appreciate it. Kevin Rainey, Slidell, Louisiana, Napa know-how. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
All right. See you, buddy.
All right, man. Thanks.